every fighter that I represent is my boss. It doesn't matter if they're in a 4-round fight on their debut or they're fighting for every belt in the division for 100 million. I work for them. And it's very difficult for those old school guys to have that same mentality, because back in the day, the promoter, you work for the promoter. You know, that's why people like Don King, you know, when he was representing Mike Tyson, he was the boss. Mike did as he's told. Now, it's a complete flick.
When did it change?
I would say like Mayweather probably did a lot of it. You know, Mayweather kind of set the way for fighters being their own bosses. You know, no, I control the revenue. Because that, for me, is the purest form of the business. You give a fighter a purse, right? You're fighting for the world middleweight title. I'm giving you $1 million. You look at it with your team, you look at the deal, you accept it. When the fighter gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, you move to an open book policy, which for me is the perfect structure to have a great relationship with a fighter. I did it with Anthony Joshua, many other fighters. You sit down, you know, most of the time it's with the guys that really understand the business. Floyd, this is where Floyd comes in. You look at the revenue, projected revenue you know that exists, the gate, you know that's selling out 100%. The pay-per-view is always subjective to the night, but you know if you're a big name fighter, the region it's going to be in, the closed circuit television, a commercial sponsorship, the international rights, all the revenue. And you say to the fighter, this is the costs of the show. Okay, this is the undercard, this is the venue hire, hotels, flights, etc., etc., etc. You cap the costs. It's an open book. The net profit of the show goes to the fighter, and the promoter takes 20%. And you never, because what happens is a fighter,
20 of net.
Yes, 20 of net,
not gross.
No, net, because you agree to costs.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So if it starts at 20 million, how much is going to end up being cost?
I mean, you know, if you're talking about the costs of a show, could be anywhere between $1.5 and $3 million to run a show.
So let me ask you then, if it's the guy's getting paid $6 million, it doesn't matter. The 1.5 is fairly consistent.
Sometimes, but maybe the cost of the undercard would decrease.
Less.
If it's a mega show, you want other world title fights on, etc., etc.
Right,
Ticket prices are through the roof. You want to deliver a great night of boxing. It all depends. But generally, that concept is only for the huge names. Canelo, Floyd, AJ, you know, these kind of names. The others might just say, I just want my purse. Just I don't want to look at any numbers. Just tell me how much I'm getting. The problem with that is they never, you know, they walk into a venue, they go, how much money is he making? You know, how many pay-per-view buys did it do? And then, like that, someone says, it did 2 million buys. It did, what? The promoters made 50 million. That's why I love the open book, because it's so transparent. You know, and I'm happy with those margins. You know, you talk about AJ, these guys making, you know, 40, 50, 60 million a fight, you know, and sometimes that 20% will decrease over time when a fighter starts making more money, because they might say to you, actually, 20% is a lot of money. And most of the time I go, yeah, I mean, I think we're responsible for a lot of your success, but I also think you're right. It is a lot of money. So moving forward, it's 15. You know, I think you've got to be fair and you've got to be honest and you've got to be transparent. That's how you build long-term relationships with talent.
What is the role you play? So because the art of a promoter, I'm fascinated by promoters. What's the role of a promoter? Because it's got to be different than you got the agent, you got the manager. What role is the promoter playing? What are you doing with me? I'm a fighter. What kind of conversations are we having?
So many different levels to it. I mean, taking me aside for now, the company, the business, you know, when you're talking about away from the shows and you're pitching to an athlete, you've just turned professional, right? You need to be guided in the correct way. You need to have regular activity, 5 or 6 fights a year. You're going to have six round fights a year. You're going to be able to build your profile. You're going to be able to make sure the matches are made against the right opposition. We're going to build you internationally. We're going to put you in America, in London, in Saudi Arabia, in Mexico, and we're going to give you all the experience you need to mold you into a championship fighter. Now, the business, when you talk about what is their role, absolutely everything. From the TV deals, you know.
Their role, meaning the
promotional company.
Not agent, not manager, not these guys.
The manager's role is really to deal with the promoter. I got to be honest with you. For me, I always feel like if you've got an honest promoter, the manager's job is sometimes a little bit redundant, but you know, it's a middle ground to push.
Do you guys not get along? Like, do managers and promoters typically have who has fights with who? Who doesn't? Friction is where?
So a promoter's job is to pay the right money for the fighter, as in for the show and for the fighter to make the business work.
Right.
The manager don't give a fuck about the promotional business. They just want as much money as possible for their fighter.
Got it.
A lot of them get it. A lot of them don't. And the fascinating thing, and that's why boxing is such a tough business, there are no barriers to entry in boxing. So tomorrow you could wake up and go, no, I like that chat with Eddie Hearn. I think I'm going to manage fighters, right? And next thing you're phoning me up saying, can I come and see you? Because guess what? I'm now representing this guy, and this guy. And I'm like, okay. And we have a meeting. You go, I've been thinking, I think this guy should get $10 million. I'm like, on what planet? No, but I think that's, Saudi Arabia and this and that. And, and now I'm saying, no, I'll tell you what, I'll show you the P&L for the show. And you tell me how he should get $10 million. I'm not really interested in that. I just, and that's like the frustration of the business. It's not a normal business. You're not dealing with people who have gone through the educational process about a P&L in boxing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just dealing with someone who said, I don't care what it says.
Well, let me tell you, did you see the interview with The Rock when I asked him about the negotiation he did with Vince McMahon? He said something so interesting. I said, so Vince McMahon, he built a $10 billion company. What was it negotiating with him? And he said, how long is it? It's too long, but I'll just tell you what he said. He says, one day I go to Vince, I say, hey, Vince, I've been doing great and I want to get paid. He says, okay, great. What do you want to get paid? He says, what does Stone Cold Austin get paid? Steve. He says, $1 million. He says, I want to get paid $2 million. He says, can I ask you how you came up with that number? So he says, the way I came up with that number is I just want to get paid twice as much as what the number one guy's getting paid. And he says, okay, fair. But do you mind if we do something? And The Rock says, what? He says, do you mind if we take the next 2 or 3 months, you work with the CFO in accounting and see exactly how this thing works out? So The Rock says, fine. So he says, it took a few weeks. I go and spend time with the CFO and the accountants. And then I realized I can't ask for $2 million. So he comes back and he says, look, 3 weeks later, they have the follow-up meeting. He says, so what do you want to do? He says, well, listen, I'll be happy with the $1 million. He says, no, let me tell you what I want to do. I want to tie it for you. You'll get your $1 million, but if you perform and sell these out, I want to pay you above and beyond. So The Rock says, fine. Year goes by. Vince sits down with him. He says, so what do you think you made last year? He says, I don't know, about $1 million. He says, no, you made $15 million. He said, what? He says, that's when I realized the game, the business aspect of the business, right? More I got involved, I realized the more I can sell tickets, the more I can move. They make money, I'll make money. But you're saying managers don't think like that.
That's the problem. Sometimes a manager's talking to you about talent and they don't sell tickets. They don't drive subscriptions. And that's a major problem.
So what risk do you take? Do you take a risk and say, I don't know if I'm no matter what got to pay this guy $10 million, whether I sell a single pay-per-view, if I sell $2 million, do we want to take this risk? And how do you make that decision?
On timing, position in the marketplace, position with your new broadcaster, so many different things. The way you're feeling that day, the punt that you want to take, the position your business is in the industry. I mean, so many different things. Most of the time, we will make decisions without emotion. That's key, based on the reality of the numbers. My dad's a chartered accountant, one of the youngest ever qualified. Yeah. And he has drummed into me since day one. Numbers.
He was a snookers guy. He was
snooker. Created all the the major.
Wasn't he like the chairman of the board till like 2010 or something like that? He was the.
But I don't know. I'm sure you've seen the McMahon show on Netflix. I mean, he made me feel very normal. But again, you talk about that winning mentality.
Yeah.
I mean, dangerous at that level because it becomes, winning's always everything to me.
You're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you this, but the last 13 and a half years, I've been working on my first fiction book to write, ever. Fiction book to write. And while I finished this book, a year ago, I got the strangest phone call about one of the characters in the book where the guy wanted to meet with me and he read the book. And afterwards, it's like, wait a minute, am I the villain in the book? This is a story about a character named Asher, who is half Armenian, half Assyrian, whose father was involved in the Iranian Revolution, linked to Savak, working with the Shah, that they escape and he gets recruited to a secret society. Well, when you go to the secret society, it's been around for a couple thousand years. They've developed some of the craziest leaders of all time. And they test you. There's unique tests that they have at this society where they test to see your emotional mental toughness. One of the tests that they have is very rigorous. It's purely mental. Of course, there's a physical one, but one is mental and emotional. If you're Armenian, if you're Syrian, if you're Persian, this is a book you're going to be reading and saying, holy moly, this is the kind of stuff you talk about in here? Yes. If you're somebody that's fascinated by history, this is a book for you. Characters. There's a technology that this society, secret society, builds where you go into a vault. I won't spoil it for you. When you go down, they have a technology where you get to sit down and watch and have a 3-4 hour conversation with Tupac. You can set up a debate between Karl Marx and Ayn Rand. Karl Marx is in the book, who wrote Communist Manifesto. Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged, is in the book. Marilyn Monroe explains the concept of seduction and sex in the book. When you read the book, it's about development of the next leaders in the world and how they do it and how they've been doing it for many years. And it's also about how to prevent the end of civilization and how this organization goes about doing it. So I've never written a parenting book before, but if I ever wrote a parenting book, this is the closest thing to it because it's all mindset, a lot of crazy stories. Again, 13 and a half years. Trust me, I told myself I will not publish this book until I sell my insurance company and I'm fully disconnected from it, where it's no longer my responsibility 100%. When you read this, if you're a creative person, if you like fiction books, if you enjoyed Atlas Shrugged, or if you enjoy Divergent, if you like books like that, I think you're gonna enjoy reading this book. It's the creative side. Business books is very easy. Here's how you do it. Here's how this how it works. This is very creative. If you haven't placed the order yet, now you can order it on Simon & Schuster, Amazon. I'm going to put the link up below somewhere here, maybe even in my profile. Go order the book and read it. I've never written a book where I can't wait to read your reviews to see what you think about this book. So I'm going on this wild journey, and we have some plans with this book here. If you support the things that I work on, I would appreciate you going and reading the book, order the book on Amazon, and then post a review. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.